Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Cynthia Ng. 2 more days of campaigning till Malacca's state election. Which coalition has the upper hand? And with the possibility of a hung assembly, what are the likely scenarios? That's coming up. Pakatan National will announce its chief minister candidate tomorrow. The coalition secretary general, Datuk Sri Hamzah Zainuddin, said discussions would be held with PN component parties to select an individual who was accepted by the community as a whole and could attract support from fence-sitters. He also did not rule out the possibility of putting forward a woman as the chief ministerial candidate. On November 11th, PN chairman Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin said that the coalition would announce its CM candidate before polling day on November 20th. So far, Barisan National has nominated Datuk Sri Sulaiman Mat Ali as its chief minister candidate, while Pakatan Harapans has picked Adli Zahari. With the current political climate in a constant flux, is there a possibility of a hung assembly in Malacca? And which of the current coalition has the upper hand? Professor Wong Chin Huat from Asian Strategy and Leadership Institute gives us some insights.
If you have a hung assembly, then meaning no party wins a simple majority to form the government, then the largest party would have two options. One is to reach out to another party to form a coalition government. The second option is to form a minority government with the support of another party on the basis of confidence and supply agreement, CSA. It seems like it would be very close to call whether or not that UMNO or PH may gain a simple majority. So there is a chance that I think the parties are prepared for a post-election coalition. For now, it looks like UMNO still has an upper hand, but it's very hard to tell whether that it may lose a few seats because of turnout and because of the multi-corner fights.
UMNO and Barisan National are seen as the frontrunners, but Chin Huat is of the view that Pakatan Harapan still has a chance to win the election.
PH has a chance to win, but it is below 50%. The reason being that the turnout would be low for PH especially. PH voters are not excited yet to feel coming out, but what is in its advantages is that UMNO is facing infighting because of candidacy selections and chief minister candidates. So some of the dissatisfied UMNO supporters may actually support PH, and furthermore, PN may pull away a little bit of votes from them.
As Malacca gears up for its 15th state election, Chin Huat highlights two key factors to ensure the state government remains stable and long-lasting.
Now, whether or not it's a hung assembly, you need two safeguard mechanisms. The first is an anti-hopping recall law, so that if you have aduns jumping to other parties, the voters can always choose whether or not to recall them and cause a by-election. Second, you need to have a constructive vote of no confidence mechanism, meaning you cannot overthrow the sitting chief minister without having another chief minister ready who can actually win a simple majority. In other words, the vote of no confidence for the sitting chief minister is accompanied with a vote of confidence for his or her successor. Therefore, a negative majority is also a positive majority. Now, if you have that, then you can be sure that the government would last, or otherwise you have a new government without another state elections unnecessarily.
The Drug Control Authority has given conditional approval to the COVID-19 vaccines from Sinovac and AstraZeneca as booster shots. Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said approval had been given for the two vaccines to be used as booster doses for individuals aged 18 years and above and who have had received vaccines of the same type. In a tweet today, Health Minister Kari Jamaluddin said this would allow the vaccination technical working group to make recommendations on who could receive the shot under the heterologous booster program. The Health Ministry is open to clinical research on the use of marijuana for medical purposes. Kari Jamaluddin called on any parties who want to use cannabis for medical reasons with adequate scientific evidence to apply to the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency (NPRA) for evaluation and registration. Once the product is evaluated by NPRA, Kari said that it will be registered under the Control of Drugs and Cosmetics Regulations 1984 before being marketed in the country. He added that the use of medical marijuana is permissible in Malaysia as it does not violate the Dangerous Drugs Act 1952, Poisons Act 1952 or the Sale of Drugs Act 1952. Kari said for now there are no cannabis-based products for human medical treatment that are registered in Malaysia. For years, many female students in Malaysia have had to undergo period spot checks where they are told to physically prove they are on their period through means which violate their privacy. The Education Ministry has recently issued a circular banning such practices, but there are calls for clearer directives on reporting mechanism and action to be taken against those who continue to conduct period spot checks on girls. We speak to Janelle Tan from All Women's Action Society.
The first one is that the circular does not exactly specify the types of penalties or rehabilitative actions that would be taken against figures of authority who either conduct or get other stakeholders like school prefects, for instance, to do period spot checks. So this definitely needs to be addressed. Secondly, there needs to be clear and transparent guidelines on reporting mechanisms that are available to the survivor and whistleblower. Investigative processes that will subsequently be undertaken by the MOE as well as the State Education Department and District Education Office should the complaint be proven, as well as thirdly, channels of redress such as counselling available to the survivor. So these guidelines should be available.
Janelle called for the Education Ministry's circular on banning period spot checks to be extended to all schools in the country.
The circular, right, it primarily applies to national and national type schools. When I say national type schools, I mean, the vernacular schools at the primary level, or at the secondary level, it would be the SMJ case, for instance. So the circular only applies to these schools, but they don't exactly 100% apply to educational institutions that fall under the state government or state religion authorities' jurisdictions, for example, Sekolah Agama, or private schools, or Mara colleges under the Ministry of Rural Development.
Based on AWAM's April 2021 testimony analysis, out of 215 incidents of sexual harassment in schools, period spot checks make up almost 60% of the violations.
That shows that awareness is lacking, and thus the MOE needs to prioritize regular training of school management. When I say school management, I mean teachers, counselors, principals, the PKHEMs, and etc. On sexual harassment and gender sensitivity. So these 4 long-term strategies.
We will go for a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Authorities in Delhi have shut down all schools until further notice due to worsening levels of air pollution. The government has put a ban on non-essential trucks from entering the Indian capital. Construction work has also been banned until Sunday, with the exception of transport and defense-related projects. A toxic haze has smothered Delhi, home to some 20 million people. 6 of the 11 coal power plants within a 300-kilometer radius were also told to cease operations until further notice. Delhi is one of the world's most polluted capital. The air in the city turns especially toxic in winter months. One of the contributors to the air pollution is the smoke from farmers burning their crop residue in neighboring states, while fireworks during the festival of Diwali, which happens at the same time, only worsen the air quality. People in Delhi were breathing 17 times more pollutants than the acceptable limit set out by the World Health Organization's safety guidelines. China and the United States have reached an agreement to loosen restrictions on journalists operating in each other's countries. This marks one of the first diplomatic breakthroughs between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping's administrations as leaders from both countries met in a highly anticipated virtual meeting. The two governments had agreed to lift visa limits on journalists, reversing policies that had severely curtailed travel and access for media professionals in both countries for more than a year. In March 2020, Beijing expelled more than a dozen American journalists working for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times and the Washington Post, a move China said was in retaliation for restrictions on Chinese nationals working for media outlets in the United States. Since then, U.S. outlets operating in China have not been granted new visas for journalists. Under the new agreement, journalists will be able to travel in and out of their country of assignment freely. Both governments will increase the validity of journalist visas from 3 months to 1 year. South Korea plans to reduce the gap for COVID-19 booster doses given to senior citizens from 6 months to 4 months. The country is now facing a surge in critical cases since restrictions were eased earlier this month. More than 90% of South Korean adults are vaccinated, but breakthrough infections have been growing among elderly people, straining the medical system. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency said it has decided to shorten the dosing interval for booster shots for people aged 60 or older and those who live or work at nursing homes to 4 months from 6 months. People in their 50s and frontliners, including soldiers, police and firefighters, can now get another jab 5 months after their last shot. More than 82% of all serious cases reported this week are from elderly people. The most powerful telescope ever built is scheduled to launch in mid-December. The next generation James Webb Space Telescope is designed to look deeper into the universe than we've ever been able to. After countless delays, the successor to the Hubble telescope is set to launch on December 18th from French Guiana. Towering 3 stories tall, it will be able to peer further into space and further back into time than any other spacecraft.
And I like to think of it as NASA's vehicle for the deepest space exploration that humanity can do. It will allow us to see farther back in time to the time when the very first stars and galaxies were being born.
The telescope has endured years of delays, including a combination of factors brought on by the pandemic and technical challenges. According to NASA, the Webb telescope's mirror is nearly 60 times larger than previous space telescopes, the largest mirror NASA has ever built. The more light the mirror can collect, the more details the telescope can observe. Construction on Webb first began in 2004. Since then, thousands of scientists, technicians and engineers from 14 countries have spent 40 million hours building the telescope. That is all we have for you on AWANI Tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro AWANI app. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.